I'd like to add one point. If you say, yeah, we can say there is. We see that there is a cultural difference between these two companies. These cultural differences can create a risk, but it's very, very difficult pre-deal to establish a cost, an amount of money that we have. Okay, so we will buy your company for this amount of money less X due to cultural differences. It's very difficult. There are some studies in order to quantify the cost of cultural difference, but it's too philosophical in a way. It's not yet so practical.
So I have a question. This happened roughly 16 years ago during Y2K. So I'm dating myself here. I was managing IT. The company decided to buy a number 2 player. I was in a brokerage company. They decided to buy a number 2 player. I was in the English Canada, and they bought another company, number 2 player in French Canada, that's in Quebec. We talk about cross-border, that is within the country, right? Everything happened, that deal landed on my desk to do the IT integration. As soon as we started doing the IT integration, within a couple of weeks, I lost like 30% of the top architects on the IT side, because they decided they don't want to report to Anglo or another English Canadian company. So they decided to drop off. Fortunately, it was a difficult time at that time because it's Y2K. There was a lot of demand for architects and others, but we didn't plan that at the initial phase, but we have to jump in and get these things sorted out to get the people, process, technology, everything, processes integrated. So how do you look at it? I'm talking about just within one country. Now we are talking about cross-border integration, like multiple in the EU. It's even worse because you're talking about multiple countries, different cultures. How do you take this into consideration? It's more of a risk up front. How do you handle that? I think you touched upon the IT area.
You're right. This is a risk that must be considered absolutely up front. So if you are working in an environment like the one you described, French Canada and English Canada, this is something that must be considered. If you do not consider that, you are keeping out a very delicate area. I give you I had a similar experience. It was in South Africa and Netherlands. That was South Africa and Netherlands. South Africa was a colony of Netherlands, and there was also a different political, and that was a cause of failure. So you're right. That must be considered before. Otherwise, it's very too risky.
And secondly, to the general, besides put the culture things difference on the side, what is the key reasons for failure or success in large M&A deals in the large corporations?
Sometimes it's difficult to write statistics, because when you talk about success or failure, if you want to analyze in detail, then, well, we must specify what we mean for success, what we mean for failure. We are considering the corporate value, if that is a listed company. Are we considering the number of clients? Are we considering the number of employees? So, I mean, sometimes it's difficult. Just to, one parameter that to me is very important is the speed, in the sense that the integration, every integration is painful for everyone. So if you try and keep this pain as short as possible, that could be a key driver for success.
So how can technology enable successful integration? And you already mentioned something about that. Also touch upon how can technology enable cultural integration, in quotes, because we just heard you say that it doesn't have to be homogenized, but we still have to work together. So how can technology enable this?
Good question.
Well, if you take, for instance, manufacturing, I'm thinking to some large manufacturing companies where the IT, the ERP system whether Oracle, whether SAP, is not only IT, it's also where the process is. So the sooner you integrate the IT system, the sooner you integrate the processes, the sooner people will work together in the same way, and in other words, you deploy the integration. That's an example.